Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu yesterday returned to Abuja, the nation's capital, after attending the 28th United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. Apart from participating in the conference, the president had bilateral talks with King Charles of England, the president of the UAE, and leader of several countries and multilateral partners to concretize engagements.
President Tinubu also witnessed the signing of an accelerated performance agreement between Nigeria and Germany to improve Nigeria's electricity supply, and hosted a high-level meeting with stakeholders and investors in the Nigerian carbon market and the electricity buses rollout program. This morning on Breakfast Central, we were joined by Segun, Sopitan, the principal partner of Woodridge and Scott Consulting, to assess the economic gains, if there are, from the summit, and how this will impact the lives of Nigerians. Good morning, and thanks for joining us, Mr. Sopitan.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Kindly help unmute your device.
Please unmute your device.
I'm unmuted.
All right, great. We can hear you now. Thank you.
All right, thanks for joining us. Let's quickly get your views on, the whole drama concerning, the conference at first. Nigeria with 1,411 delegates. The government arguing that's only sponsoring about 422, I believe. Let's start with that before we look at the details and, of course, what they've been able to achieve so far.
Well, it was all, like you said, I mean, it was quite dramatic. And that's not unusual with how we do things in this country these days, There's always drama every day. it's one day, one trouble for Nigeria, 422 delegates, 800 and something, 1,411, whichever number you choose to pick. I struggle to understand why you need that number of people. I understand the importance of COP28. I understand the importance of the conversations that were going to happen there. I understand the need to have a conglomerate of competencies, expertise, people from different fields regarding affecting governance in Nigeria. That there's no doubt about. But do we need up to 400 people to have those conversations? I doubt it very strongly. But having said that, there has to be a reason why there were large delegates from most countries across the world. In fact, when you look at the numbers that we had for this conference, we had double the number of people we had for COP27 last year in Egypt. There has to be a reason for this. COP27 had roughly about 40,000 delegates from all over the world. COP28 had 97,000, almost 100,000. That's well over double the number of people that attended, the last conference of delegates for climate change. And if you look at the COP26 as well, the numbers were less than COP27. So for me, what this says is the climate conversation is gaining traction. Countries are beginning to see the importance, and the economic implications of climate change, global warming, and all of that is beginning to gain the required eminence that I think countries should be giving it. Excuse me. So I think that's why we see this increasing numbers. So Nigeria going with 1,411 delegates as against less than 200 to COP27 maybe is speaking to the importance that this government may be putting on the climate question, and maybe speaking to the general trend that we see from this president of targeting foreign investment and foreign inflow of funds.
Yeah, well, or maybe it's the Dubai Tourism Ministry that should be giving kudos. Because if this was happening in Calabar, I don't think we'll have 97,000 people coming here. So, let's also put that in consideration.
That's the point.
But do you think that the fact that we've had a conversation concerning the numbers of people, some would argue that the president showing up there physically is a show of strength and economic, welcoming people to be a part of Nigeria's economic stability, to come and invest in the Nigerian economy, and that him being there would, of course, establish strategic agreements and partnerships with other countries. But that conversation about the large numbers has overtaken the essence of his being there. Is that a position you share?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it was a good thing that he was there. For COP27, President Buhari did not attend.
Yes.
He sent the Minister of Environment, So it's a good thing that the president of the country, Nigeria, made a very strong showing at this conference and, participated very actively on the sidelines and on the main event, and all that. But unfortunately, as with all things with governance in Nigeria these days, look, whatever is happening with other countries. So I'm striking a balance. I understand that most other countries went with large delegations. But if you look at the delegates per capita, Nigeria was one of the highest amongst the people that went with large delegations. So there is a disparity in our participation in terms of the number of people that went. And I think that given the economic realities at home today, a 1,411 delegation is simply too much. Even if you say it's 422 that the government paid for. Look, considering that this is international travel, knowing what ticket fares are, knowing what hotel fares are, internationally today, I don't think that should be something we're spending that amount of money. We must have spent money in the billions of naira. It's not something we should be spending money on today, especially given that the economic gains will still require a lot of work to convert to reality for Nigeria. There's a lot of work to follow from this. So I'm not so sure that going there with these huge numbers was necessary. I think we should have been more circumspect about this.
Also, the whole idea of, this might show the level of seriousness with which the Tinubu administration takes climate change and some of all those things. Do you think that the current Nigerian government should be more focused on what's going on at home and fixing what the issues are at home than these trips to different parts of the world that, I saw a little bit of the speech that he gave, and there was nothing, a lot of people argued that there was nothing really, there was nothing there. It didn't seem like there was anything really that was going to be gained by all of that. So should we be more focused on fixing our issues back at home instead of traveling to different countries? Because nobody's coming to invest in a country that has Nigeria's current issues. And, it sounds very, 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 very disheartening to see for example, the Inspector General of Police was also there talking about green energy and green policing or something like that. But look at police barracks back home. Policemen are reportedly, sewing their own uniforms. Policemen don't have vehicles to even attend to, security challenges. But the Inspector General is talking about green energy or green policing in UAE. So do you get the point I'm making? Why are we wasting all these billions of naira going to these conferences when we could have really just worked at home?
Look, Osarogie, to be honest with you, I have absolutely no problems with us reaching out to the global community and asking them to come and invest and engage with Nigeria. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, I think we need it. The world is a connected community now. Whatever happens in Canada today affects Nigeria today. It's no longer, there is no time lag anymore. There's monies available all over the world. Investors looking for sound projects to invest in, looking for sovereign projects, looking for private funding, private projects to fund and all of that. We can participate in that. Our president can go out to fish for those funds, to fish for those partnerships. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But
I agree with that.
But the point that you make, right, is also true. And I think that the two things need not be mutually exclusive. Unfortunately, they seem to always be in Nigeria. You do not need to lose focus on what's happening at home in order to pursue foreign investments. I think that the problem we have is a huge governance problem where even if the president wasn't going abroad as often as he has been going since he came on board, we probably will still not have very good governance at home because the things that are required to deliver governance are not in place. So we need to see the president taking part and being strong globally, and we need to see him dealing with the local issues that we have. We need to see the police fixing the issues, pursuing strong reforms to deliver a policing structure that will address Nigeria's security concerns today. We don't need to see the Inspector General going to talk about green initiatives in Dubai. I agree with that. But, there is no reason why the president can't pursue foreign investors by traveling abroad and also fixing our very serious problems.
Can I please permit me to interject at this point, just to mention that the primary reason for the president's traveling is not just to, poach foreign investors or to welcome foreign investors to Nigeria.
Not an economic.
It's to be a part of this climate conversation, which we think is a very important conversation because we are not the major contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, but we suffer it. We're one of the countries. Africa suffers it more than the countries who are the highest contributors. Also, if we're talking about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, the real environment experts would argue that part of it is reducing the number of people traveling. It's sort of counterproductive because the more people that are traveling, the more we're having CO2 emissions. It's why many years ago when Greta Thunberg was going for one of the COP conferences, one of the, I don't know which year, I can't remember now, she refused to go with a jet. She went with one handmade net zero boat ship type thing. So I think it's in a way it's very counterproductive if we're taking a huge number of people to something that is supposed to be a climate conference. And experts would argue that we really didn't need to have that. So yes, just to further buttress what you're saying, that it's important the president does that. He can be running governance at home. And it's also important for us to be a part of climate conversation, which leads me to my next question about, the gains from this conference. How do you think that this has impacted the country? I know that on day one, one of the major wins was the agreement to the loss and damage deal. But some would argue that this loss and damage conversation has been going on for years. At last COP, it was a conversation that came up, and is how effective are we going to see these agreements? Is there going to be any timelines? Are we going to be sure that between now and the next COP29, we would see that there's been a massive improvement from where we are?
I'm glad you brought the loss and damage fund up, because I think this was one of the major attractions for a lot of countries, So the loss and damage conversation, like you say, has been on for a while, but it's been concretizing over the last few COPs. And I think that last year, the conversation narrowed down, distilled to the details of how it's going to work and how much we're talking about, such that by COP28, we now have a figure. We now know that the loss and damage fund to be administered and managed by the World Bank will be $100 billion. Now, that is a lot of money. And for me, that alone would explain why you are having, these huge numbers of people, delegates coming from different countries, because you have to come push your position. The idea behind the loss and damage fund is to say that, look, there is climate damage, being suffered by the globe. So some people are contributing to that damage. They are the climate culprits. And some people are suffering as a result of the damage, and they're the climate victims. So the climate victims need to come together to make their case, to show how they have been negatively impacted by this and what portion of that fund is required to help fix some of the damage that they're suffering. So that is one of the benefits that I think Nigeria may get, and I hope that we've gone with the right, set of people to push the argument home, to look at what's happening in the Niger Delta, to look at what's happening with gas flaring, to make commitments regarding how we fix that, such that, yes, the Niger Delta, suffering from very serious climate issues as a result of oil drilling from multinationals, and all of that. So there's a lot of things that need to be said by these countries. Indonesia, for example, suffers from flooding, typhoons, and terrible climate issues every year, but they contribute less than 1% to global emissions. So all of this,
East Africa as well.
Yep. Exactly, across the East African coast as well.
This is, one where, I was talking about before, that you have the Niger Delta that Nigeria has failed. If we're being honest, in the last 15, 20, 30, 40 years, Nigeria has failed the Niger Delta. The level of environmental damage, it's not a climate challenge. That is not a climate issue. That is a self-made issue and environmental degradation that has happened to the Niger Delta in the last 40, 50 years. We've had that issue and we've ignored it for so long. We've been talking about the Niger Delta cleanup, since Buhari's administration. In fact, Goodluck's administration. We haven't done anything with the Niger Delta cleanup. So, you know, I mean, is it the same government that hasn't been able to fix that is going to the UAE? The same government that, you know, you're expecting to get donations or support, financial support from foreign countries and use that money to build a vice president's house? Is that the same government? I mean, you can understand why nobody trusts, you know, why you need 1,400 people. But we're going to break. When we come back, we're going to move into, we'll talk a little bit more on this and then move to other things. Stay with us, Mr. Sopitan.
Welcome back to Breakfast Central. We've been having the conversation about COP28 just before we went on the break, looking at exactly what this means for the Nigerian economy, the loss and damage fund, and exactly how that will impact the economy. And you know, it's very interesting to have these conversations, and I do hope that these are conversations that in the next 1 year we will not be revisiting, because different countries have made pledges to the loss and damage fund. USA has pledged $17.5 million. Japan has pledged, I think, $10 million. Two other countries have pledged, like UAE pledged $100 million. So different countries have. I was even surprised that the United States was significantly lower, right? But in the next 1 year, I'm hoping that when we come back to do a review of COP29, because Nigeria will show up at COP29, that all these monies would see that these countries have contributed and the payments have been made like they were designated to be paid.
Donald Trump called it a hoax.
Yes, he never believed in it.
Yes, but let's ignore Donald Trump and just really ask ourselves what the world has achieved with these conferences in the last 10 years. I mean, what moves have been made? What strategic moves that you can say, okay, these things have fixed or at least slowed down, or at least you can say that, okay, yes, we've made significant progress after all these conferences.
They can all just be in their countries and join the Zoom
You
call.
absolutely can. So you don't even need to just speak. So and that's why, when, Mr. Sopitan, asked earlier, I said, it's maybe just the Dubai Tourism Ministry that has worked here. That's what we are seeing. Everybody wants to go to Dubai. That's why. Because if you had this conference in some other country, if you had this conference in Mexico, in Calabar, or in some random African country,
they will not.
I'm certain that you will not get 97,000
It's also an
people
opportunity for them to relax and bond with each other, because they feel like, oh, they've worked for the past few months. So if I'm being honest, it's a mini holiday for them as well.
To be honest, that's what it is. Yes, there would be bilateral, meetings. There would be, some deals that will be, struck, on the side. NGOs that are also, of course, the delegation from Nigeria is not just Nigerian government, NGOs and different bodies were able to also put their delegates. So all those things would also happen on the side, no doubt, and that's fine. But once again, what is the Nigerian government likely to achieve from this conference? There's no sign that has shown that we will achieve anything, tangible. And African leaders
need to do differently. We had this conversation at COP27 that African leaders need to understand that they're hit hard by the impact of climate change, even though they haven't done much to contribute to climate change. So we must think different ideas.
When you say that, I'm always wanting to ask why. Why is Africa hit, hardest?
We're hit hardest because we already have. We don't have the infrastructures to be able to deal with the effects of the weather.
So it's not like we're hit hard because, the climate is just harsher here.
No.
It is because leadership has failed us.
Incompetence on the part of our leaders.
All right.
All right.